Hi, this is Chris with Career Services. Very happy to be talking with you about interview preparation today. I really enjoy interviews. It's probably because when I think about an interview, I have framed it in terms of a discussion that I get to have either one-on-one or with a small group of people about how I can add value to that company, to that team. And so that is how I frame interviews. So the image that you see here on the slide where you've got this authoritarian person kind of chatting with you about, hey, this is the way things are. That's really not what comes to my mind when I think about them. And so that reframing really helps me to enjoy those. You'll see that I've got a camera icon in the top right-hand side of my slide here. That's an indicator that you may want to snap pictures of some stuff as we go along. I do have some of those slides marked with that, but obviously this is a recording. You can refer back to it at any time, but if you find something that's really important to you, you may want to snap a picture of it. So 9 interview facts just to kind of get us started. There is an element of truth that the pressure's here, right? So hiring managers will make an instant decision about you. I'll let you know that a lot of it can be based on the resume. It can certainly create a pretty strong bias in your favor, especially if you're producing good professional documents. So keep that in mind. You should have answers to everything that they ask you. And I think that makes sense, right? So again, it's a discussion that you get to have with folks. And usually if you're having an informal discussion with someone, you're not going to say no comment. And so, or I really don't have a response to that. You'll come up with one. So would encourage you to think about that in those terms. What you wear does matter. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. Hiring managers can tell if you're not prepared. So do your homework, get in there, get prepared for it, understand what the position looks like. Your body language does speak volumes. So take a look at the image on the right-hand side of the slide here. You can see the woman on the far right side is attentive, eager. She's brought a document in that she can share with folks. That could be a resume. It may be just her talking points, but she's ready to go. And so, and ready to explain how she can add value to a company. Potential employers don't always know what they're doing. And this is kind of an interesting one that some students are flummoxed by, but that is certainly the case. Potential employers don't always know what they're doing. It could be that it's a hiring manager that human resources has allowed to kind of go out into the field and chat with folks, but HR kind of controls the process. That may be part of the issue. Another part of the issue is that it may be kind of a small startup firm and they're not exactly sure what they're looking for. So kind of keep that in mind as well. They really want you to ask questions. And again, this really starts to reveal that this is a discussion about how you add value to a team. So make sure you come equipped with some great questions. We've got some that we'll talk about a little later. You are expected to know what the company does. So if you've applied and you're answering to a job advertisement, that'll tell you what the position kind of looks like and how you can prepare for the position. But I would recommend that you get onto the company's website and take a look at what they do and have an understanding of where they operate, what type of industry they're in, what their customers and what their stakeholders look like. And then finally, you do need to follow up. That's as simple as a thank you note. I'm a huge proponent of handwritten thank you notes. Sometimes you can't do that. So at the very least, an email. As you go to prepare for these, you want to do a little bit of evaluation and then a little bit of research. So when you go to evaluate, identify your skills for the job. Take a look at that job advertisement that's out there and kind of match, hey, look, I've done this. Hey, look, I'm capable of doing this. If you see another thing that you haven't quite done, but you're very eager to know about it and to get involved with it, kind of think about that as well. Then you want to crosswalk that stuff over to 5 scenarios that demonstrate those skills, right? And kind of sit and think about those in terms of stories you're going to tell a little bit later on. I'm going to give you a framework later that we'll talk about with those 5 scenarios. So I want you to keep in mind that we're advocating that you identify 5 scenarios that'll demonstrate those skills. You should consider everything on your resume and cover letter to be fair game. So this is just part of the preparation process. Just realize what you've said on your own resume and cover letter and be prepared to answer clarifying questions based on that stuff. So that's the evaluation piece. And then you're going to do a little bit of research, right? So understand the position could be based on the job description. You can certainly look at the organization's website, follow the company on LinkedIn. So some great information there. You may find some information on the company as well as the type of positions that you're looking at on Glassdoor. So that's a resource that'll help you with. And then based on that research, kind of sit and conjure up about 5 to 7 questions that you can ask at the end. So typically an interview is going to sit and ask you some general questions, some scenario or some behavioral based questions. And then at the very end, they'll ask, do you have any questions for us? And so just be prepared for those. If you want to kind of go big here, if it's a publicly traded company or if it's a company that is maybe privately held, but they still publish their financial filings on their website, that's a great source of information. You can kind of sit and see what the CEO, chairman, president of the company are saying about their direction, where they've come from, where they're going to, and that may help you provide some context for this as well. You should certainly practice for these, right? And so you can always conduct mock interviews. Michigan Tech Career Services can offers that service to you, so you can make an appointment with one of us to help you with that out. I always like to think about types of questions that I could potentially be asked and practice my response out loud. And so that not necessarily in a mock interview setting, but just kind of thinking through what my response will be. And so some people find it's helpful even as they're walking to kind of practice those out loud, just to kind of get the talk track down, right? You can also ask a friend or a family member to interview you. And again, it's just about rehearsing and it's just about practicing what you're going to say to certain questions. So we always urge you to practice. Questions could ask that typically get asked, they usually will start out by saying, again, hey, tell me about yourself. And so that's a general question. Other questions that they may ask are things such as, why are you interested in this company? Another question is, why are you interested in this position? So you should probably prepare for those. They may ask you questions such as what you know about the company, what you know about the position. They may ask you questions that are behavioral based, such as what are your strengths and weaknesses? And then they may ask you questions such as why should we hire you? So just be prepared to answer questions kind of centered around those. That first question is usually done in every single interview. It's considered to be an icebreaker question. And so when you think about that question, I would just recommend that you start out by thanking them for meeting with you. Again, it's an opportunity to showcase what you can do for their team. And so thank them for the meeting. Talk with them about your experience, maybe internships, maybe co-ops. If you've been out in private industry for a while before coming back to school, it may be that you have some professional experience as well. It may be that you have project experience based on stuff that you see in classes, so don't hesitate to talk about that. Ultimately, they are looking both for a technical skill set as well as a good teammate. So if you have had leadership opportunities, talk about those. Any kind of budgeting experience, supervisory experience, talk about all that stuff, right? Talk with them about your strengths and also about your accomplishments. And just kind of remember, this is about a 30 to 60 second response to that question when they ask you, hey, tell us something about yourself. They may ask you behavioral questions, and you can see I've got my camera icon here, so you may want to snap a picture of this slide. These questions are typically asked in terms of, hey, tell us about a time when you used your strengths. Tell us about a time when you overcame your weaknesses, right? Stuff like that. Tell us about a time when you worked as a part of a team. And so a great way to think about these is to frame them in terms of situation, task, action, and result. What you'll find is that some recruiters, based on HR requirements, are actually scoring your responses. And when they go to score your responses, this is the most common mechanism that they're using to score it. So if you think that that's going on, I would actually recommend using these specific terms as you talk through those 5 scenarios, right? That talks about your skill set, right? So the situation was this, that situation will provide them some context. The task that you needed to deal with describes the problems and challenges that you were dealing with. The action that you took explained what you did and what the team potentially did, what you were able to solve. And then also talk about the results, right? So the results were or the outcomes were, and then state those benefits, savings, rewards, recognitions, etc. And so that is called the STAR method. We've had some students that have actually been told by recruiters, we are going to be gauging your response based on the STAR method. So that's not uncommon to be told that. And if that's the case, just kind of walk them through these. And I strongly urge you to just call those words out, like section headers in a paper, right? That's been bolded, underlined, and in all caps. So the situation was, the task was, the actions that we took were, and the results were X, Y, and Z. The day of the interview, make sure that you're dressed appropriately. I'll talk with you a little bit about that here in a second. Know where you're going. So I always urge folks to kind of get an idea of even what the parking situation looks like. If you're going to interview on a campus, work campus, something like that, there may be some security requirements. And so if you can get in there and kind of drive around and get an idea of things, that's always a great thing to do. You should plan to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early for the interview. It's just a little bit of a buffer. You can get yourself calmed down a little bit in case something happened getting through the gate or something like that. Bring copies of your resume. Remember, it's a discussion, right? It's a meeting. And so anytime I sit down and meet with folks, I will always bring a printed agenda. That keeps me on track, and it kind of keeps the ball rolling. So you can bring a copy of your resume. Those 5 scenarios that describe your skills that will help contribute to their team, you could potentially have those printed out as well and bring them as notes. Those notes are for your eyes only. I wouldn't share them with them. However, you can refer to them during the interview. So that's something that's okay to do as well. The other thing is remember that it's okay to be nervous, right? So interviewing can be exhilarating. And so it can cause a little bit of anxiety for some folks too. And that's perfectly normal. I'll let you know that as someone who has interviewed people before, it's normal to see that. I'll also let you know that maybe me as an interviewer is a little bit nervous too, right? Because it's kind of a formal event, right? One of those types of deals. And so folks are being deliberate and very careful. And so it's okay to be nervous. In terms of virtual job interviews, and obviously we're seeing a lot more of those right now because of COVID, I would urge you to test that technology out, have a backup plan and test that out too. A great plan for this is if you're meeting over Zoom or something like that, just to go ahead and share the telephone numbers in advance as well, in case something happens. You want to be professional, and so that includes both the background as well as how you're dressed. And so a great background is a blank wall, a bookcase. If it looks a little mayhemish behind you, that's okay. Just take a white or a black sheet, kind of cover that stuff up, or maybe create a shroud around you. So that it kind of takes all that stuff out of the picture for you, right? So that's a great kind of pro tip. The other thing is to be sure that you're dressed professionally. Stuff happens where you may need to get up. So even though the camera is only trained on the top half of you, you may find that something happens where you have to get up during the interview, and you just want to make sure that you're providing a professional image from head to toe. I'm also a huge proponent of full dress rehearsals. So check out that technology, make sure that it works, right? Check out that backup plan, make sure that works as well. Check your background. So if you've got a camera, go ahead and set everything up behind you. Make sure that it looks professional behind you. And then the same thing with your attire as you get dressed up. You want to make sure that that looks appropriate in the camera as well. Really what this is about is controlling what you can control here. And you can certainly control a lot of these elements, right? Again, camera icon in the top right-hand side of the slide deck here. This is something that you may want to snap a picture of. This is what my kind of rig looks like, if you will. I started out with the one on the left-hand side with some notes behind the camera. That allowed me to keep and maintain eye contact, really while reading through some documentation. You'll see that the fonts there is pretty big. That allows me to kind of step back away from it and still read it. Over time, I kind of evolved it based on some lessons learned. And so what I started to do was to create a setup in which I've got a iPad here. It's got a camera right here that's kind of set up. This is what I'm conducting the meeting on. And then meanwhile, I've got my notes here behind it, right? So if I want to kind of sit and draw reference to those things, talk about stuff that's on the resume, talk about those 5 scenarios that I've framed in terms of situation, task, action, result. And then I can kind of scroll through those and kind of keep the line that I'm looking at right here while maintaining eye contact with the camera lens. You'll see that this rig, I'm sitting right on top of the router. I just don't want any problems with that. And so that is my solution for that. The other thing that I've had happen is it didn't catch me, but I was getting concerned about it over time. And that had to do with power management on these devices. And so I could just go ahead and have a hardwire connection right in, right where I can. So I've got everything plugged in. And so just a set of recommendations for you, right? Might as well, again, the point of this is to control what you can control. Dress and appearance counts. Speaking of things that you can control, this seems as though this can create an enormous amount of bias in your direction. And so folks will make a decision about you. They'll look at the resume, make a pretty quick inference about what they're seeing based on the resume. But the next image that you want to see is a nice professional image of you dressed. So I always like business attire. I like these images on the two images on the left side of these slide decks here. So both of these are fine. It could be that this one here is okay as well, but you just want to get that as formal as you can, right? As close to business attire as you can. And again, the images on the left or two left here are fine as well. I realize that we do have a lot of business casual and even some smart casual in the workplace, and that's fine. I'm the beneficiary of something like that, right? Because you get to kind of be in a more relaxed setting, more comfortable with clothes. However, an interview is a special thing, and so we would encourage you to dress appropriately for it and give it the respect that it's due. The thing that they're potentially looking at is, look, I may need this person to provide an incredibly professional image when we are providing a presentation to a client, and I need to be able to see them in that role. And so they need to be able to understand how seriously you'll take things and how you'll dress for stuff like that. It may be that, especially out of college, these are kind of entry-level professional positions. It may be that they need you to provide a presentation to someone in the C-suite, someone on the board of the company. And so again, you need to be able to provide an incredibly professional image when you do that, and they need to be able to envision you in that role. And that's why we get dressed up for interviews, so folks can envision you looking like that. I do think we all agree that the person on the left side just doesn't work in any professional setting. So if you look like that, go home and go change. During the interview, control distractions, so turn off the cell phone. If it's in person, smile and have a firm handshake. Maintain eye contact. That takes some practice in a virtual interview setting, so make sure that you're practicing that with your camera. Show interest in the position. Think back to that second image that I showed you of those women waiting to interview. The one on the right-hand side was showing a lot of interest. And again, it creates bias in your favor. Have concise responses. They need to be thorough but concise. The key to getting both of those is to provide that STAR framework. If you walk them through situation, task, action, result, it'll keep you on task. Those responses will be thorough, but you'll need to move through each of those elements, and so it'll keep them concise as well. And the other thing that you want to do is provide concrete examples of things when you go to respond to their questions. Smiles do get jobs. I realize that you're not going to all run out and go get jobs at Holiday Inn, but this really does matter as well. Again, it's one of those things that can create bias in your direction or in your favor. So make sure that you're smiling. I encourage folks when they interview virtually to stand up for those. And so, and to smile at the same time. It's something that people will pay attention to and provides a good signal. I mean, again, they're looking to figure out how you can create value for their team. And so they need you to be a great teammate, and great teammates are typically very cheery. Listening skills are also important. So again, control the distractions, pay attention to nonverbal signals that they're giving you, paraphrase. If they're asking you questions, focus on those key words. And then if you have any questions about an interview question, don't hesitate to ask clarifying questions. So listening skills are important. Questions that you could potentially ask, what do you like most about working for the company? Can you tell me a little bit about the office culture? How will you evaluate me in my first 3 months? What brought you to the company? What's kept you there? You can ask them questions such as, what are your next steps? I was working with the students a while back, and she told me that one of her favorite questions to ask was, can you tell me about a project that you worked on with the company that you're proud of? Which is an amazing question to ask. You can also ask, what does your timeline for filling the position look like? After the interview, send a thank you note within 24 hours. I really like to see handwritten thank you notes. That's not always available to you. So sometimes it's an email. The other thing is that you may have been interviewed by a panel. And so if that's the case, you may only have contact information for one person. If that's the case, send them a note thanking them for interviewing you, and then ask them to please extend your thanks to the rest of the team as well. And they'll make sure that that happens. Just make sure that you proofread before you send it. We just don't want to make any typos before we send stuff out there. I want to end with a couple of resources here. If you ever want to make an appointment with us, don't hesitate to do so. All of our events, the career fair, are on Handshake, so take a look at that. And then the other thing to look at is on our website, we've got some information about interviews there as well. So thank you for listening today. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.